Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Welcome to Storm in the Field, the podcast that explores the exciting intersection of sports, fantasy football, gambling, maybe a little bit of music, and at the end of the day, anything I want to talk about. I'm your host, B.A. Storm. You never know what we're going to get into on our podcast here. Maybe a top 10 list, maybe the week's fantasy football rankings. Who knows? We may have a guest. It may just be me. We're just going to do what we do. So I hope you'll join us on this thrilling ride as we navigate the twists and turns of the mind of Storm. This is Storm in the Field, and we're ready to take on whatever comes our way. And welcome back to Storm in the Field. I'm Brian Allen. I'm your host, also known as B.A. Storm. We'll get into that here in a minute. It's been a little over a month since we dropped the teaser episode of Storm in the Field, and I was hoping to get one of these out about every couple of weeks. So this one's about 2.5 or 3 weeks late. It's been a crazy few weeks at work, and I hadn't had a chance to sit down and get any recording done. But I hope to get better. Still a rookie at this, and I appreciate you being patient. I do want to give a big shout out to the 3 individuals who have listened to the teaser episode, which kind of fell short of my expectations. I was hoping I'd have a few more listeners than that. I certainly shared it with some more folks, but hey, the 3 of you who are out there who are listening, and 2 of you who have subscribed to the podcast, hey, I appreciate it and look forward to interacting with you as this little adventure of mine continues. But anyway, this is Season 1, Episode 1 of Storm in the Field, and we're going to kick off today's episode with some fun. I want to go back and look at the Cowboys draft, and of course, those of you who don't know me, the Dallas Cowboys are my favorite football team, win, lose, or draw. It goes way back to growing up and watching on Sunday afternoons with my granddad. He is diehard Cowboys through and through, and unfortunately, I got that same gene, and so we've been happy in the good times, and we've struggled through the bad. But the Cowboys are my team, so we're gonna go back and look at the Cowboys draft and get some hot sports opinions on the Cowboys draft, even though it's a little bit late. We're also going to take a look at my fantasy baseball team. I'm not I play and probably enjoy fantasy football a lot better than I do fantasy baseball, but I do play. I have at least one team every year, and this year I just have the one. I've been playing in this league for several years, and for some unknown reason, I have won the thing the last two of the last 3 years. So I thought it would be interesting just to kind of follow my progress this year as we go through the season. And through the first 5 weeks, hey, knock on wood, I'm leading the thing. So things are kind of looking up. I've got a pretty strong pitching staff, and my offense is coming through for me right now. So knock on wood, that continues. And we're going to look at that. But before we get into any of that, wanted to talk a little bit about the podcast, Storm in the Field, and my nickname, B.A. Storm. Kind of give you some background into that. I wish it was a more interesting story, but I'm going to give you the boring facts and let you know why the podcast is named Storm in the Field and why my nickname is B.A. Storm. So it's tied to fantasy sports, which we'll talk a lot about on this podcast. But if you go all the way back to when I first started playing fantasy football with my brother and some of his buddies, we all were looking for nicknames, and the limited graphics that were available back in the 90s on a computer. You're talking about some bitmap images and old Microsoft Paint. And so what was available was pretty limited. So we all wanted a logo to go along with our name. And as I was looking through what was there, hey, I found a very, very rugged looking cloud with a lightning bolt, and struck through it. And my initial thought was I was going to be the lightning, and that just didn't sound right. So I kind of tossed it around in my head a little bit and came up with Storm. So my team was the Storm, and at the time I was going to school in San Marcos, and so I was the San Marcos Storm for just a brief moment. That was probably my last semester in college. So I was the San Marcos Storm, and played a couple of seasons of fantasy football with my brother and his friends. Hey, and I fell in love with it. It made watching NFL, the other games other than the Cowboys, made it a lot of fun. Just following those players, and so I continued to get interested in that. And before I knew it, I was in multiple leagues, and started joining some ESPN leagues. Well, in those old ESPN leagues, you had to have a name, and you also had to have a location. Well, this is a couple of years later, so I'm no longer in San Marcos, and I've bounced around. I've started my career, and I've been in a couple of different places, so my location kept changing, and I wanted something that was a little bit more stable, so I just decided to use my initials, BA, Brian Allen. Started using my initials for my location, and then Storm was my fantasy football team. So my fantasy football team evolved into BA Storm. So fast forward a little bit more, I start working with one of my best friends, Craig, and when he found out I played fantasy sports, hey, he just started calling me Storm, BA Storm, and BA Storm got shortened down to Storm. And then everybody in the office started calling me Storm. And then all of our extended friends started calling me Storm. Hey, and before I knew it, I started referring to myself as Storm. And really, well, there was a lot of folks that we hung out with that probably didn't even know my real name. All they knew me was as Storm. So that's how I got my nickname. And as the years went on, you kind of joke about things, things we would rather be doing other than our real jobs. And, you kick around doing different things. And one of the things we always talked about doing was starting a sports bar. And we were going to call it the Storm Cellar. And, after me, I was going to run it. Another one of my buddies was going to, we were going to have a little microbrewery. And we talked about, somebody being the kind of the brewmaster, and somebody running the front, and the restaurant part, somebody running the bar. But, hey, we were going to call the joint the Storm Cellar. And, of course, it was just kind of a pipe dream. But when I started thinking about doing this podcast, as I mentioned in the teaser, I wanted to call it the Storm Cellar, and I got to looking on Apple Podcast, for some ideas. Hey, and there were already a couple of Storm Cellar podcasts out there. One was a weather storm chaser type of a deal, and then there was another one I can't quite recall what the topic of it was. It may be kind of like mine, just a mishmash trash podcast of a bunch of different stuff. But anyway, there was a couple of Storm Cellar podcasts already out there, so I started kicking around some different ideas, and landed on Storm in the Field. I wanted to incorporate something with sports because I'm a big sports fan, and that's what we're going to talk about predominantly. I think I mentioned that we're going to talk about some other things, some music and some top 10 lists from time to time. But anyway, that's kind of the brief history of BA Storm and the podcast Storm in the Field. And like I said, unfortunately, it's not a stellar story, but it is what it is, and we'll accept it and move on. But anyway, we're going to get on with our episode for today here in just a minute, and when we come back, we will get into the Cowboys draft. All righty, welcome back. As I mentioned, we're about to get into the Cowboys draft for this year. It's always interesting. I am not I love college football, and I watch college football, but I don't get into the players as much as some of my buddies do. I've got a buddy that lives and breathes and dies by the combines and the lead up to the draft and following the college players. Hey, I love college football. I watch the games. I follow the teams. I'm particularly interested in the point spreads and the favorites and the overs and the unders and all that kind of stuff. But the players I don't really watch very much. But hey, once the draft gets here, I start getting familiarized with some of the players coming out. I pay special attention to the Cowboys because they're my team, and going into this draft, I knew we had some needs and some positions to fill, and I looking back on the draft, I'm feeling a lot better about it than what I did as it was happening. But sometimes that's the case. You get wrapped up into the anticipation of your pick coming up, and it kind of builds and builds and builds, and then once the pick's made, it's like, really? That's what happened? But we're going to go pick by pick and just kind of give you some thoughts of mine. And, of course, this is my opinion, which isn't worth a whole lot. If it was, I would have more than 3 listeners to my podcast, and I'd probably be making money doing this rather than just doing it to kill some time and to give me an outlet. But as we were watching the first round, I knew we had some needs. I knew we needed a tight end. It would have been very exciting to see us go after one of the kind of the star-studded running backs and whatnot. Hey, but we also needed some help with the offensive line and to shore it up a little bit. But as our pick came, we picked number 26, the defensive tackle out of Michigan, Mazi Smith. And at first glance, I was a little let down. I was a little disappointed in the pick. I'm accustomed to being disappointed in Cowboys draft picks. Just my history with them and whatnot has never it's a lot more disappointing than it is exciting. I'll say that. We've made a few good picks through the years, but for the most part, it's kind of been a letdown. And I was afraid that Mazi Smith was going to be another one of those picks that was just a letdown in my mind. But as I started reading and listening to some of the commentators, hey, we needed a run stopper, and to compete in the division that we compete in, and also the conference. If when we're up against the Giants and the Eagles, and then eventually having to face the 49ers, hey, we've got to have somebody that's going to stop the run. And so defensive tackle, shoring up that spot, made a lot more sense. And then the next morning, after the first round was over, the next morning I was on Twitter and I saw the reaction of some of our current players, and it was exciting to see them so excited about this pick. And Dan Quinn, our defensive coordinator, certainly liked the pick, and so I started feeling a lot better about the direction that we went in the first round. Second night came along, and hey, we went after a tight end, again, a Michigan kid, Luke Schoonmaker, and hey, pass catching tight end, could probably fit it right into our system. Going to give Dak another weapon. So I think that pick made a lot of sense to me at that point. Our next pick was the 90th overall pick. We went with a linebacker out of the University of Texas, which, hey, I like drafting Texas kids. DeMarvion Overshone. I think he's a former defensive back that moved to linebacker, so a little bit undersized, but I think he's got a lot of heart, and he can fly around the field. And so I'm looking forward to seeing him play as well. Then we went and we drafted a position that I feel like we're pretty deep in already. But the Fajico kid from San Jose State, defensive end, he's going to give us some depth. And when we have been able to rotate folks out and keep that defense fresh, it has sure helped us in the past, especially the past couple of years under Dan Quinn's system. So I can't argue with that pick. At this point in the draft, though, I'm still a little concerned because we have not addressed our offensive line yet. And we really, really needed, or in my opinion, needed a guard, and we have not drafted a guard, and we've let some of the top guards kind of slip by us. But at the 169th pick, we finally picked an offensive lineman, offensive tackle, Asim Richards out of North Carolina. Got him with a compensatory pick. Not the guard I was looking for. Not particularly even the offensive lineman I was looking for. Hoping we have some upside there. I know that some of the commentators were talking about his body control, and it is not developed quite like they would like to have seen, and the ability to sustain blocks may be in question. But hopefully we can get him in, get him in the training facility, and maybe develop him a little bit, and allow him to help us out. Next pick at 178 was a cornerback out of Southern Mississippi, Eric Scott Jr. Again, this was kind of an underwhelming pick to me until I started watching some of his highlights. See, I wasn't familiar with him, but hey, big cornerback, big, long, some upside there, I think, and hoping we see some good things out of him. So he's a big cornerback, explosive. And hopefully he'll be able to jump out there and help us out immediately there in the defensive backfield. The most talked about pick probably past the Mozzie Smith deal was Deuce Vaughn. Of course, his dad, with the Cowboys organization. But we took the Deuce Vaughn, running back out of Kansas State, at 212. A little bitty guy. Talk about getting lost behind the offensive lineman and hard to tackle and hard to see and hard to find. He's going to be exciting. I think if we can get him the ball in space, not necessarily just running out of the backfield, but putting him on some choice routes, maybe getting him one-on-one with some linebackers, making the first guy miss, and then seeing what can happen after that. I'm hoping he can develop into one of those exciting players that is probably not your lead back, not your featured guy, but a companion to your running game and a complement to what we already have in Tony Pollard. And so excited about watching him. And then our last pick of the draft was Jalen Brooks, wide receiver out of South Carolina. Again, another pick in a pretty deep position, numbers wise, and hopefully he can add to the talent pool there as well, and find his way on the field. Signing Brandon Cooks and having CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup in there. There's probably not going to be a lot of room, but a little depth never hurt, and so that's how we rounded out our draft. So. What started out as really hopeful and exciting, then kind of my roller coaster ride through those 3 days, a little bit disappointed, and then the more I started studying and looking, hey, I'm back to hopeful. The pendulum kind of swung, and I'm back to being excited about this draft, being excited about our team. And excited about some things moving forward. So anyway, hey, again, that's my opinion. We'll see how my opinions and thoughts turn out over the next year and maybe a couple of years for some of these guys. So if you have thoughts, I'd love to hear them. You can follow me on Twitter. It's at BA Storm is my personal Twitter. You can also follow the show, and those Twitter links are found in the show description. So, hey, give us a follow, shoot us a message, give us some feedback. I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of this stuff as well, and get the debate going. That's what makes it fun. We're going to talk a little fantasy baseball next, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Storm in the Field. This is Brian, your host, and we're fixing to get into just a little bit of fantasy baseball. We're not going to spend a lot of time here because this is going to be a regular segment for us to just check in on my team and see how we're doing. Again, I mentioned earlier, I just play in one fantasy baseball league this year. I used to play in a whole lot, but fantasy baseball is tough. It's a everyday thing. You can get by fantasy football. It's one game a week for each team, and basically it's Thursday through Monday, so you're not talking about the entire week. And really, once you set your lineup, it's set for the weekend. There's not a lot of changing. Hey, fantasy baseball, if you're not changing your lineup and getting it set every day, you're not going to be very successful, is what I've learned. So try to limit my baseball playing to just a few leagues. And like I say, this year I'm just in the one league. It's a hardball league. I don't even know some of these guys. I do know a couple that have played in the league, and I've played with them for quite a few years. And as I mentioned, I've somehow figured out how to win the last 2 of the last 3 years. And so we're going to try to make it 3 of the last 4 this year. And through 5 weeks, I'm in first place. So it's a head-to-head league. You play a different team every week over the 7 days, and there's 10 categories, and you get essentially a win for each category that you win. On the offensive side, you have runs, home runs, RBIs, stolen bases, and batting average. And then on your pitchers, with your pitchers on the pitching side, you have wins, saves, strikeouts, ERA, and then walks and hits per innings pitched. So those are your 10 categories. You get a win for each cumulative win that you get each week in those categories. So after 5 weeks, I'm 32, 13, and 5. And as we're recording this, I'm winning 5-4 this week so far. So the weeks run Monday through Sunday, and then each Sunday evening, once all the games have been played, it gets tallied up, and you have your results. So hey, I'm 32, 13, and 5 in first place. I'm up by 2.5 games, but the swing on those, I mean, it's wild. How you can be up 2 or 3 games, and then the next week you find yourself down 2 or 3 games. So it's pretty wild. But hey, we're going to run through my lineup real quick, and like I say, there's only 8 teams in this league, so our lineups, hey, they can get pretty stacked pretty easily, and there's a lot of great players out there on the free agent market just because there's not enough roster spots for eight teams to load up on. So you're going to hear some names on my roster and think, how in the heck did he get all those great players? But hey, everybody's got that same number of great players on their team. But hey, looking at our pitchers, my lead dog right now is Garrett Cole with the Yankees. He's my number one guy. I also have Shane Bieber from the Guardians in a starting role for me. I have Joe Ryan with the Twins, who's been pretty solid. I have Jake DeGrom, who is on my injured list right now, but hopefully he'll be coming back. He's a Ranger, and I love the Rangers just like I love the Cowboys. We may get into that maybe on the next episode, talk about the Rangers a little bit more. But then I also have Nathan Eovaldi with the Rangers. Jake DeGrom and Nathan Eovaldi, both free agent pickups for us this year, and excited to see them. I've gotten to see Jake DeGrom throw in person. My wife and I made it to a game earlier in the season, and he was fun to watch. Pitching is where I swap out. I've got a couple of other starting slots, but I switch out and use the waiver wire quite a bit with the other 2 starting spots. That helps me load up on strikeouts and try to win at least that one position. And if I can play it right, get some strikeouts, but also possibly get a win every now and then. So I swap out some starting pitchers from time to time. My relief pitchers, hey, I've got Ryan Presley from the Astros. And then I have David Robertson from the Mets. And then I have Paul Sewell from the Mariners are my 3 relievers. And I usually just keep it to 3 relievers and try to get closers as much as possible. I also have recently picked up Will Smith from the Rangers. It looks like Jose Leclerc is on the outs. So I grabbed up Will Smith to see if he could maybe gets me a few more saves throughout the week, and haven't had him long enough to really reap the benefits, but we're going to hang on to him a little bit longer. Again, a Texas Ranger, so I got to have some Rangers on my team. Hey, my offense, starting at catcher, I have Will Smith with the Dodgers. It's been pretty solid. At first base, I have Matt Olson with the Braves. Second baseman, Marcus Semien with your Texas Rangers. He has been rock solid for me at second base, and one of my favorite players right now. At third base, I have Bobby Witt Jr. with the Royals, another rock solid player. And then at shortstop, I have Xander Bogaerts with the Padres. In my outfield, Adolis Garcia from your Texas Rangers. I have Ian Happ with the Cubs. I have Aaron Judge with the Yankees. I have Michael Harris II from the Braves. He is starting in a utility role for me right now, and has been kind of in and out of my lineup, off my bench and into my lineup, and then back to the bench. I have Byron Buxton from the Twins. And then I have Nolan Arenado from the Cardinals, who is my backup third baseman, but also gets quite a few at-bats throughout the week in a utility role too. And that shows how deep the league is, or how limited, I guess, deep our lineups are more than anything. When I have Nick Arenado predominantly on my bench. But anyway, that's my fantasy baseball team. I'm excited about the year. I've done a little bit of trash talking, which I hope doesn't come back and bite me in the butt. But it's always fun to hey, I created a logo with a little storm and then a championship trophy kind of in there in the foreground, just to let those other owners know that, hey, I am the defending champion, and the championship comes through me. But I hope me saying that out loud and putting it on my logo there doesn't come back and karma get me. But anyway, that's what makes it fun. And even if I don't win it this year, it's been a good first 5 or 6 weeks, and looking forward to finishing out the season and having some fun with it. So we'll be checking in on my fantasy team pretty regularly throughout the podcast, and keeping up with things. So if you have any comments on any of my players or my team, or if I say somebody's rock solid and you think they're dog crap, hey, let me know that too, and we can get into a conversation or a debate or whatnot. But it's all good and it's all fun. So anyway, we'll come back and wrap up the show here right after this. All right, welcome back. We're nearly out of time. I wanted to maybe get into a top 10 list to this time around, but like I said, one of my listeners has already told me, hey, you need to keep this keep time in mind, when you're making these podcasts. So I don't want to get these things too long and run people off. So we're going to just wrap up here just with something real quick. I think I mentioned in the teaser that, hey, I've discovered Chat GPT, and hey, it's fun just to ask that thing questions and see what it comes up with. So this might stir up some conversation with some of you. But I asked the Chat GPT, which is an artificial intelligence program. You can ask it questions and or tell it to create something, and hey, it'll do it. It's pretty amazing. But I asked the Chat GPT to create the greatest baseball lineup of all time, so professional baseball lineup, and of course his first comment was, putting together the greatest baseball lineup of all time is no easy task, as there's been many incredible players throughout the sport's long and storied history. However, based on statistical accomplishments, accolades, and impact on the game, here is the possible lineup that the Chat GPT came up with. So we're going to run through this and then wrap up the show. But our greatest baseball lineup of all time, batting first in left field, Rickey Henderson. Batting second in right field, Babe Ruth. Batting third as a designated hitter, Ted Williams. Batting fourth at first base, Lou Gehrig. Batting fifth in center field, Willie Mays. Batting sixth at second base, Rogers Hornsby. Batting seventh at third base, Mike Schmidt. Batting eighth at catcher, Johnny Bench. And batting ninth at shortstop, Ozzie Smith, who growing up was, even though he didn't play for the Rangers, was one of my favorite players of all time. Your starting pitcher is Sandy Koufax, and your closer is Mariano Rivera. So that's the greatest lineup of all time according to Chat GPT and the artificial intelligence program that runs that. Hey, so again, love to hear your feedback on that, see where you may agree or disagree. I've got some thoughts on there. I mean, I think you could make an argument. Those are some dang good players right there, but hey, there's some others out there who I think could be interchanged pretty easily, just based on what they did for the game too. So anyway, just something to think about, something to chew on, and as we wrap up the show, be sure that if you'd like, follow me on Twitter. Links are in the description, and we'd love to hear from you, and hope to see you. Subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. There's if you're listening on Spotify, there may be a question or a quiz when you wrap up. Be sure that you give us some feedback there too on how you like the show. So until next time, take it easy, be good to each other, and we will see you soon. You've been listening to Storm in the Field. If you've enjoyed your time here with us today, you might consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review. You can also follow us on Twitter. The links are found in the description. I'd love to interact with you and get your feedback. Until next time, keep storming the field.
Welcome home, Columbia. Beautiful, beautiful.